When the name Charlemagne is uttered, it evokes images of swords, crowned glory, and the rumble of horses echoing across the European plains. But beneath the surface of battle and conquest lies a much more complex and fascinating story. Charlemagne did not simply wage war to carve out a vast territory. He built a medieval empire that would influence the course of Western Europe for centuries. And he did so with an astonishing mix of brute strength, religious devotion, administrative innovation, and cultural ambition. His was not just a reign of conquest, but of construction. His empire was a living organism, stitched together by roads, laws, monasteries, and ideas. Charlemagne was born in 747, the son of Pepin the Short, the first king of the Franks to be officially anointed by the Pope. From the very beginning, Charlemagne's life was tied to the church. His father's alliance with the papacy laid the groundwork for a concept that would define much of the medieval world: the fusion of Christian faith with royal authority. When Pepin died in 768, the Frankish kingdom was split between Charlemagne and his brother Carloman. But Carloman's death, just 3 years later, handed Charlemagne the undivided rule of a powerful realm. He did not waste time. Charlemagne set about expanding his domain with relentless energy. The Saxons in the northeast were among his fiercest adversaries. For over 30 years, he battled to bring them under his control, not just militarily, but spiritually. He ordered mass baptisms and burned sacred pagan sites, determined to transform the Saxons into Christian subjects. It was brutal, yes, but also strategic. To Charlemagne, unity could not exist without a shared faith. The church was not just a partner in power, it was the glue of his empire. Charlemagne's military campaigns were not limited to the Saxons. He marched into Lombardy, conquered Bavaria, pushed back the Moors in northern Spain, and defended the Pope against rivals in Italy. His reign was filled with motion, a king almost constantly on the move, leading armies, inspecting towns, holding court, yet the goal was never chaos. It was structure. Charlemagne believed that order required both a strong sword and a steady hand. At the heart of his empire was a new kind of kingship, one that blended Germanic warrior tradition with Roman imperial ambition and Christian duty. This vision culminated in one dramatic moment on Christmas Day, 800, when Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans in St. Peter's Basilica. It was both a spiritual blessing and a political masterstroke. Charlemagne, now emperor, claimed to inherit the mantle of ancient Rome, but with a Christian soul. The imperial title gave Charlemagne more than prestige, gave his rule a philosophical foundation. He was no longer just king of the Franks. He was the protector of Christendom, and he took this role seriously. He issued laws in Latin, reformed the Frankish legal code, and sent out royal agents known as missi dominici to oversee local counts and ensure justice was being served in the name of the emperor. These agents were often pairs of lay nobles and churchmen, ensuring that both secular and sacred interests were represented. It was an early form of bureaucracy, and while imperfect, it was a step toward centralized governance. But Charlemagne's empire was not built solely on conquest or administration. It was also an empire of learning and culture. What later generations would call the Carolingian Renaissance began under his watch. Charlemagne gathered scholars from across Europe, including the Anglo-Saxon Alcuin of York, who became a close advisor and head of the palace school. At Aachen, Charlemagne's favorite residence, scribes copied ancient texts, poets wrote Latin verses in his honor, and architects constructed grand basilicas in a fusion of Roman and northern styles. He ordered schools to be set up in monasteries and bishoprics, not just for training clergy, but for educating the sons of nobles. He insisted on the standardization of Latin, which had become fragmented and inconsistent. The Carolingian minuscule, a clear and readable script developed during this time, would later play a key role in the preservation of classical literature. Without Charlemagne's cultural policies, many ancient texts might have vanished into the void of history. Religion remained at the center of everything. Charlemagne believed he was answerable to God above all. He often consulted with bishops and abbots, reformed the Frankish clergy, and supported missionary efforts in newly conquered territories. He donated generously to monasteries and built churches with imperial grandeur. His goal was not simply to rule an empire, but to guide a Christian people under divine order. His famous capitularies, the written instructions issued throughout the empire, often blurred the line between religious and secular rule, showing just how intertwined the two had become under his leadership. Despite his grandeur, Charlemagne was a man with contradictions. He was ruthless in war, but tender with his children, presided over a literate court but was never fully comfortable reading himself. He envisioned unity but often ruled over a patchwork of diverse cultures and languages. His empire was both sprawling and fragile, a delicate balance of personal loyalty, religious commitment, and regional autonomy. Perhaps one of his greatest achievements was not any single victory or law, but his ability to hold it all together. He forged bonds across tribes and territories, coaxed loyalty from nobles, enforced discipline among the clergy, and inspired scholars to teach and write. He gave shape to a chaotic continent, creating a vision of Europe that, while imperfect and incomplete, would echo for centuries. When Charlemagne died in 814, he was buried in Aachen, surrounded by the architectural beauty he had commissioned. His empire would not remain intact for long. His son Louis the Pious struggled to maintain unity, and after Louis's death, the empire was divided among Charlemagne's grandsons. These divisions eventually led to the formation of what would become France and Germany. In that sense, Charlemagne's legacy was both enduring and fractured. He built something vast and meaningful, but it was not immortal. Yet the memory of Charlemagne endured like a glowing ember in Europe's imagination. For medieval kings and emperors, he became the ideal. For the church, he was a defender of the faith. For Renaissance humanists, he was a patron of learning. Even Napoleon and Hitler would later evoke his name in their imperial dreams. And while his world is long gone, his ambition to unite, educate, and lead across a continent remains a cornerstone of European history. Charlemagne's empire was not just about land or war, it was about vision. He saw in the fractured post-Roman world a chance to rebuild. He used faith not just as a personal compass, but as a political tool. He embraced learning not just for prestige, but for cohesion, and in doing so, he gave medieval Europe a spine. He was not simply a king, he was a builder of systems, a curator of culture, a guardian of the church, and a father to a new European idea. In the end, Charlemagne's story is not just the tale of one ruler, it is a lens through which we can understand the early medieval world. A time when warlords could become emperors, when monasteries were centers of literacy, and when faith could shape empires. He walked the line between the sword and the cross, and in doing so, left behind an empire that was not just vast, but visionary. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Charlemagne, the man who didn't just conquer lands, but laid the groundwork for what would one day become modern Europe. His story is more than battles and crowns. It's about vision, ambition. It's about the belief that a fragmented world could be stitched together with faith, learning, and leadership. From brutal campaigns to peaceful reforms, from royal decrees to the quiet scratching of pens in candlelit monasteries, Charlemagne built more than an empire. He built a legacy. If this glimpse into his life sparked your curiosity, imagine what more there is to discover behind the stone walls of medieval courts and the dusty pages of ancient books. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the past. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which historical figure you'd like to explore next. Till then, stay curious, keep questioning. And remember that history is not just about what happened, but how it shaped the world we live in today. See you next time on another chapter of the human story.